Gabriel sat on the boat, keeping his eyes on the ocean. Gabriel was spending 2 weeks on the Nedol Archipelago, a collection of 34 islands located in the far northern latitudes. He had rented a small cabin on a mountainside, alone, far from anyone else. Minigorod had a nearly insignificant tilt, just 5 degrees. Even so close to the poles, the weather was mild, only dipping below 0 Celsius for a few scant weeks in the middle of what passed for winter on this planet. He and 5 other tourists were watching for a pod of Evolbashtor, known colloquially as sea serpents. Native to the planet Pani, known for having over 80% of its surface covered in ocean. It was a human colony discovered just 1 light year before first contact in 2315, back when humanity's FTL travel was in its infancy, and travelling a light year in 11 months and 25 days was a triumph. Pani also proved that humans could live on paradise worlds without devastating the local biosphere, with, it must be admitted, difficulty. It was a dream of many humans to travel to Pani and see a sea serpent, one of those rare aliens that resembled so accurately a creature from myth. While it had teeth, these were used in intraspecific combat. The Evolbashtor was mostly a gulp feeder similar to a humpback whale, occasionally supplementing its diet with shellfish analogues. "Keep an eye on those ripples to the east," the tour guide shouted, pointing to a patch of frothing water. "They blow bubbles to scare their prey into tightly knit groups," they added, as a spray of sea foam washed over the deck. The other tourists screamed as the cold water washed over them. Gabriel hardly reacted at all. The rough water was why he had selected this trip. It meant fewer people would be on board. That meant fewer interactions with people. Gabriel had quickly fallen into his old habits. He was also reconsidering his regular trip to Yersu. He would still do them, of course, but he would scale them down considerably. Not the healthiest approach, Gabriel thought with Erola's voice. Yet Gabriel's habits were much like wearing an old threadbare coat. It did not keep you dry and failed at holding out the cold, yet it was comfortable. Gabriel noticed many small splashes on the water and watched intently. The water frothed as more and more fish were forced together and near the surface. Finally, a largemouth emerged from the water, scooping up the trapped fish. Then another and another. All in all, 9 sea serpents showed themselves. Their sheer vastness was remarkable. Long, serpentine, a faded grey, with white speckles running along their flanks and undersides. Gabriel smiled, and the rest of the passengers cheered, hooped, and hollered with joy. Even the tour guide, who had seen the sight hundreds of times, let out a cry of joy. Gabriel marched up the hill towards his cabin. As he did so, the sun setting on the horizon, despite it only being 60 hours, Gabriel could only think how much more magical it would be with half a foot of snow blanketing the land. Then again, if that were the case, his trek would be rather tricky, and lower gravity or not, the steep hill was a challenge. A few other people were making the climb, most of them in the tram system, and those few who were willing to walk were wrapped up warm in thick coats, scarves and hats. Gabriel checked his PDA. It was 11 degrees Celsius, with a wind chill of 5 miles per hour. Gabriel was unsure when he would need to start adding more layers. If he recalled what was written in the little booklet he had received with the suit, it was rated to minus 25 Celsius, though there might have just been the suit itself and not the flesh sack that sat inside it. Wiping his feet before stepping onto the deck, Gabriel took a moment to sit and catch his breath. Gabriel looked directly ahead and saw Elohu, unobscured by any clouds, though its colours were distorted by Minigorod's atmosphere. What appeared to be a large orange band running around the gas giant's equator was actually red. Then again, colour only exists in the mind, so Gabriel supposed it could be orange. It was still eerie to have that vast object suspended in the sky. Now that he thought about it, the eclipse must be long and dark. Best to relax for the rest of the day. He would be mountaineering tomorrow, and he needed his strength. Though perhaps mountaineering was a bit much. There would be no risky climbs, more like a steep walk. Tiring, but nothing overly dangerous. Not that Gabriel was against doing a more intense ascent. But after what had happened in the forest, he was keen never to be more than a day away from a bathroom again. Gabriel still burned with embarrassment whenever he thought about it. It had taken hours to get rid of the smell. He slapped his cheeks, trying to bury the memory. Not easy, as the suit absorbed much of the impact. It was all in the past, and he would take it as wisdom. Looking back once more at the gas giant, he supposed Yersu also orbited a gas giant too. He wondered how Nish and Pista were doing. Nish was probably back at work, analysing clay tablets and whatnot, while Pista would have returned to school months ago. He wondered if they thought about him, taking out his PDA and scrolling through the numerous pictures he had taken. To his regret, there were very few from the beginning of his holiday, including the first week when he began exploring with his friends. Looking at a photo of the 5 of them outside this charming little cafe they had found in a village called Uklo, that cafe had the best, not chocolate milk he had ever had. Gabriel wondered if he could keep this up. A large part of him wanted to cut the whole thing short and retreat back home. He did not hate it here. It was just bland without the other 4, and staying on Minigorod reminded him of that. Gabriel leaned back into his seat and sighed. Oh, who was he kidding? Living his holiday earlier required a level of adventurousness that Gabriel just did not possess. No, he knew what he would do. Stick it out to the end, no matter how apathetic he was. It was what he had always done ever since Jarry had passed. Gabriel sighed again and retreated into the cabin. Much like the penthouse, it had a sealed environment and a decontamination bay. He had just closed the door when his PDA got a ping. His mood improved almost instantly. It would not be Erla. She too had taken to sending physical letters, and he had just sent one to her. This one was sent by a dedicated courier, one that went to the effort to dress in period clothes. Gabriel felt he was making good use of his financial windfall. That left Nish or Risotti. It could be spam, of course, but he felt it was good to be optimistic. That proved a mistake, as the message was not from anyone he cared about, or even some rando. It was from Howard Smith. Even after all this time, that man could still ruin his day. Delete.